I'm genuinely honored that you guys would come and waste a couple hours with me tonight. I'll tell you a little more. I can't imagine any more that's worth including after that. I was here from '89 to '93, before most of you were born, in the music business program, and did all audio engineering stuff the whole way through for the sake of free studio time. I was a writer. They weren't offering a whole lot of songwriting stuff. We had publishing and some other things that were kind of in the neighborhood of songwriting back then, but I ended up doing studio time because if you're taking engineering classes at Belmont, you get first dibs on studio time, and I wanted to use the studios for demos. So when I started at Belmont, we were in Turnley Studios, which was in the basement of what's now Science Building maybe, or library.
Maybe the library.
I think it's the library now, a little tiny room, barely bigger than the control room over there, learning how to align 2-inch analog tape. Back in the day, so the students that are in the studio that's in the basement of the business building at this point was built about halfway through my time there. I think that was probably 90, 91, something like that, it opened. So I was doing some songwriting while I was here, but very little. I had a couple of songs, single song deals signed with Star Song Records back then, which was a Christian pop kind of a record label back in the day that doesn't exist anymore. And left. I got into radio. My process being here was this discovery of all kinds of music in the genre that I was focused on that I thought my friends would actually buy a copy of if they knew it existed. And they didn't know it existed because there was no radio support for it. Radio in those days was playing all a very inspirational kind of music for that genre that none of my friends would dare listen to. And I thought, man, if there could be radio targeted at a 12 to 24-year-old, maybe they would actually, that was still, and I would say to a large extent still is, a gateway for people finding new music these days. And it's surprising to me that terrestrial radio would still be that gateway, but it is in commercial music. So I went into radio and ended up working for Y107, it was called then, 107.5 The River, for a while here in town. And then a new Christian radio station came to town that was trying, at that point, trying to do a 12 to 24-year-old demographic target. And I went to work there called Way FM. They're still here. They've changed more into a normal adult contemporary kind of a radio station. But I was working in radio because I wanted my peers to find great songs. I still was in this search for music that I thought mattered and trying to figure out a way to get into their hands. So I was still writing at the same time, but my outlet was to try and help them find other songs that were existing. And ended up, after that, going to grad school and became a student minister in a church for a long time. My wife did as well. We were in New Orleans, ended up being back in New Orleans for about 10 years. And in the process, I kept writing songs and putting them in a shoebox. Like, I would write stuff for our church, for example, or write a love song for my wife, and I would sing it for her once and then put it in a box under the bed and never do anything else with it after that. I didn't even bother trying to find an outlet for things beyond that one first use of whatever a song was created for, right? If it was created for a moment in church, created like the pastor would say, hey, I've got a new sermon series coming up, would you write a song for the sermon series? So I'd do a song for that, we'd perform it one time in church, and then it would go into a box. Or writing a song for some ridiculous special occasion, to try and romance my wife. It would be performed that one time and put away in a box, never to be heard again. So finally, at some point, my wife gave me a Christmas gift of registration to a songwriting conference that was happening here in town, like a weekend kind of event for songwriters. And she gave that to me for Christmas, and I came up here. My parents lived in Franklin, so I came up here and stayed with them and kind of climbed back into the world through that. Did a song critique session with a guy who heard the song, thought that the lyric showed potential, and asked to have lunch with me that day, and told me he wanted his publisher to meet me, and she started hooking up co-writes and said, anytime you come back to town, let me know you're coming, and I will set up other writers, established writers for you to write with so that we can help you kind of get your feet wet in the process. And so after several months of doing that, Michael Purrier, who's teaching here at Belmont now, saw one of those songs and said, I think this guy could probably write something that matters, and signed me to my first deal. He was at BMG at that point, was leaving BMG to start a new Christian music division at Universal Music Publishing, and when he did, he brought me along with him. It was the first full-time, actual sign-on-the-dotted-line publishing deal that I had. That was 2004, and I ended up trapped there for another 6 years in what was a full class. My experience with that contract negotiation is ought to be a full class at Belmont. It probably is included somewhere, like really bad deals and things to watch out for. We won't talk about that kind of nonsense, but it was a bad setup, a ridiculous kind of setup. An attorney who just wasn't paying attention, and I didn't know any better, and ended up in a horrible situation I finally got out of after about 6 years, even several years after Michael had been let go from that position. The publishing company didn't exist anymore, and everything I wrote was owned by Universal and couldn't get out of that deal. They couldn't let me go, and I couldn't get them to let me go. Anyway, vice president of that company finally said, hey, we didn't do this on purpose. We just missed it. Your attorney missed it. Let's write an addendum to your contract, let you out of this deal. So after 6 years, I got out of that deal. 3.5 of those years just being the one guy in that division, pitching my own songs on my own and working on co-writes myself. And when I got out of that deal, I had a couple of songs cut by artists at this label called Centricity, which is a little family-owned label in Franklin, one of the last family-owned labels in the world, it seems, anymore, old school indie label. I had a couple of songs recorded by their artists in that year, and they were just starting a new publishing division, and so they signed me to a deal in 2009 and have continued by some miracle to renew my option every year, and we renegotiated a couple of years ago. I've stuck around for another couple of years. So that's where I am at this point, still at Centricity, writing. Probably most of what I do ends up in a contemporary Christian pop, like K-Love radio kind of world of artists. Some pop stuff, some country stuff, some film and TV projects over the last couple of years. As well as a professional writer, you kind of write the door that's open in front of you, right? So that means developing artists along the way, that means producing some along the way, it means writing with the artists that I have opportunities to write with, or for the projects that I'm asked to write for. When somebody says they need a song, it's our job as songwriters to go figure out a way to make it happen, right? So I want to hear a little bit from you. I want to figure out who you are as well. This is obviously a bigger crowd than we expected, and also a probably more diverse crowd than we expected as well. How many of you are actually songwriting majors at Belmont at this point? Raise them proud. All right. Good, nice little handful of you. How many of you guys are in the music business program at Belmont? How many of you guys are not actually enrolled in Belmont and you just snuck in because you heard there were snacks? No one? Okay, good, because there's no snacks. So don't be, I just didn't want you to be disappointed, that's all. Okay, how many of you are in no way involved in either of those programs, but you're here for some other reason? Okay, right on. That's a bigger crowd than I expected. Right on. Okay, how many of you, let's continue this because this will help with our the workshop part of what we're doing here. How many of you would like to, at some point, you've come here, either here or here, for the purpose of having your name or your band on a record that people have a chance to buy at some point in the future? Okay, that's a giant chunk of you. How many of you want to be, have no intention to be an artist, but want to be a professional songwriter? Okay, small crew of you, good. Does that sum up everybody? You either want to be an artist or you want to be a writer, not? How many of you are just realizing this is a songwriting seminar and you're trying to figure out how to get out the door? Okay, nobody? Okay, good. Okay, good, that helps me a little bit. This thing that we're talking about tonight, co-writing specifically, what it means to write with an artist. It means that I'm going to need most of you in the room to turn your brain toward a more likely scenario in your future. The reality is, if that number of people in this room are hoping that they're going to get a deal selling copies of a record that they made in the future, statistically speaking, the chances are very slim that 100% of you are going to end up in that world. It doesn't mean that you don't have something to contribute to the music industry, to the future of the other artists around you. In fact, it may mean that you're surrounded by the people whose career you're going to connect with right now in this place. What I want us to be able to think through tonight is not just the value of co-writing, although that's where I want us to start as kind of a preliminary big picture thought, but of co-writing with an artist specifically, because co-writing with an artist for their project is such a unique thing, and it is almost exclusively what I do as a songwriter right now. Almost 100% of the co-writing appointments, the songwriting appointments that I have in a week, or the songwriting I do in any given week, is me writing with an artist for their project. I've gone through in the last couple of days and studied the number of #1 singles in most of the genres that are charting at this point over the last year. And I can tell you that there's still plenty of co-writing going on in almost every genre that exists. There's still plenty of opportunity for you to connect with an artist to make a song great. Because here's what we know. You guys can recognize right now, probably around you, but at least in your world in general, artists that you know are so stinking talented, either as a singer, as a personality, as an instrumentalist. They walk into a room and everybody goes, I wonder who that is, because they just have that charisma as an artist. And you want them to succeed as an artist. And we know, surely being in this town, if no other, we know that without great songs, they're never going to get there. Brilliant talent and bad songs will not go anywhere. So somehow, we got to figure out a way to connect great songs with great artists. Now, you have certainly heard great songs that never seem to land anywhere, right? That never wander into a great record, and they stay in obscurity and nobody ever hears them. You've also heard plenty of artists that really have no talent whatsoever, and you can't imagine how they got a deal. But they get to release a record, and somehow these songs become hits and get played a bunch on the radio. Somehow, a great song can carry a mediocre artist to the top in a way that a bad artist, I guess, with bad songs is just never going to make. It's never going to happen. So we want to figure out a way to connect great artists with great songs. Now, this is an issue these days because I would guess that, some of you at least, are annoyed by the number of artists that find success and don't write their own songs. Maybe in Nashville this is less likely than it is in other places, but for some reason we as music consumers are let down to discover that an artist doesn't write their own songs. Now, in country music that happens a little bit less. Country artists these days can get away with just singing a great song. In general, in country music, best song still wins. That's not true for every artist. There are plenty of artists that you can think of that have developed their own unique songwriting style, and it means that, like, people are offended to think that maybe Taylor Swift just sat in the room while 2 other people wrote her songs. Whereas Blake Shelton, we could care less whether or not Blake Shelton wrote that song, because it is a great stinking song. And he delivers it well, and he's a big giant persona. I mean, actually physically a big giant persona, but I mean, he's one of those guys who, if he walked into the room right now and you had no idea who he was, you would still say, dude, that guy's a star. Good grief. He's one of those guys, right? So we don't care for some reason about the songs he writes, but there are plenty of artists these days that we get annoyed. I don't know why it is that way, and I can tell you as a writer, it annoys me that we are that way in the music industry at this point. I don't expect Matthew McConaughey to write all his own lines. I want him to focus on being a good actor. I want him to be whatever character I am handing him. With singers, this was my wife's hypothesis there. For some reason, with the musicians that we listen to, we want to feel like we're their buddy. We want to feel like we're friends with that artist. We know their story, that when they sing to us, they're singing us this little sliver of who they are as a person, and I get to know them. I can follow them on Twitter. I can see pictures of them going down to Sweet Cece's to get something to eat. I know that person. So when they sing their songs, I'm hearing a little bit of their story. I don't want to know Matthew McConaughey's story. I want him to tell me the story of this ridiculous, weird character in the film. So my wife's hypothesis is that we want artists to write their own songs because we want to feel like they're our buddy, right? This is why that's annoying for me. I've been surrounded all of my life with really ridiculously talented musicians. Singers that have that unique thing in their voice that the world ought to be able to hear. Instrumentalists, man, if I can find these days an artist who can really play the crap out of a guitar and has a recognizable voice, I want the world to find them, because it seems rare these days to have a really unique voice and musical ability. I want the world to be able to hear them. The challenge is, unless they find great songs, they're not going to. So I'm going to say it's not enough for you to have a charismatic personality. It's not enough for you to be a great musician. It's not enough for you to have a cool voice. You also have to be a hit songwriter as well, or the world is never going to hear what you have to offer. You and I as songwriters have an opportunity to put great songs in the hand of the artists that we find in the hope that they can actually find the world and the world can find them. That's what I want to happen anyway. Let me do some big picture basics, if I may. These are my 7 rules for successful co-writing. This is the definitive list. There are no more rules than this. These 7 rules encompass all rules necessary for, I'm just being an idiot. Okay, let me read these. Honestly, these were 7 random things, big picture things about co-writing that came to mind as a big picture way to set up where we're going. We're going to talk specifically about what it means to work with those artists that you love around you in a little bit. But here's some big picture things. Number 1, know your role. Writing as the artist is different than writing with or for an artist. If the song is for you, make sure it stays centered on something you are willing to sing or say. If you're writing for someone else, your job is to help them say what they would say in the way they would say it or the way they would sing it. Número 2, try to be fully present. If you have an opportunity to sit down with somebody to write a song, turn your stupid ringer off. Keep Facebook closed, keep Twitter closed. Try and be fully present in that moment. If you get an opportunity to sit down with another person and create something together, be fully present. It's going to be for a short amount of time. Distractions are inevitable. Minimize them where you can. Número 3. This is a multilingual seminar. Care about the person more than the song. You are writing with a person. And the chances are, just to be honest, the chances are stunningly slim that the song the 2 or 3 of you create in that moment is ever going to be cut by anybody, ever going to be heard by anybody else in the world. Most writers write a lot more songs that don't get cut than songs that do. Eventually, you will write together a song that gets cut, and by then, you'll have a cut and a friend. Let the relationship matter more than the song. If you get an opportunity to sit down with somebody else to write a song, do not be so focused on getting a song finished that day that you wreck the relationship. Walk out of any co-write more concerned about the person than the song. Number 4, be considerate. Find a kind way to say no to an idea, a line, a word, or a direction. We're going to practice this a little bit later. If you don't like an idea, still consider it. You might be able to say, that might be the best line that we could do. Let's give it another 5 minutes and see if we can beat it. See if we can come up with something stronger. Great writers know that there's always a better way to say it or a better way to sing it. You don't have to say, nah, I don't like that. Can actually, for the sake of honoring the relationship in a co-write, be considerate enough to say, hey, that really might be the one. Let's spend another few minutes and see if we can beat it. Number 5, this is the balancing act to number 4. Be honest. Don't lie and say that you like something when you don't. You don't have to say that you hate it, but you can say you're not convinced that that's the best line that you guys can come up with. I have in my catalog piles of songs at this point in my career that I am so humiliated my name is on it. Because I didn't have the courage enough to say, I don't even believe that's true. I had one of these moments, man, 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, with an artist that is in the studio right now looking for the radio single. We were working toward the radio single, and he spit out a line that wasn't just dumb, it was wrong. It was just not true. And I'm thinking to myself, the relationship is already awkward with this guy. He was a guy who, he talked about himself in the third person the whole session. You know what I'm talking about? One of those guys who has created of himself and for himself this outside of himself persona that, man, he was just all up in himself. And I was already struggling a little bit, and we got to one of those moments where I had to decide, okay, we're going to get to the end of this day, and my name is about to walk out of the room, maybe even onto his record, with a lyric that is just not even true. What do I do? And I did back out the easy way and say, hey, let's go ahead and keep that in as a placeholder and give me some time. Let me see if I can beat that out of line a little bit, which I did eventually later, and he bought it. I talked him into it. But man, be considerate, but also be honest. Don't have to pretend to like something that you don't. All right, number 6. Know your splits up front. Okay, let me tell you what I mean. If you sit down in a room to write a song with somebody, let's just decide, all of us together, there's plenty of disagreement about this in the world in general. Let's decide, those of us in this room tonight, that song is automatically divided, ownership-wise, equally between every person in the room. As soon as you start trying to measure out whether or not the part that you brought in ahead of time was worth more than the part that they brought in once they got there, or that because you wrote the big hook chorus, that the chorus is probably worth like 60% when all you really contributed was that one line in the verse. Listen to me. Sitting down with another person to create anything is this weird and mystical process. And I can tell you that you working through a verse that you love and just having somebody next to you going, ooh, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just that changes the whole direction of the song. That if you were sitting next to somebody who was going, I don't know. Even just having the artist sit in the corner of the room and nod occasionally, to me, is always worth an equal percentage of the song. I don't give a rip if they didn't contribute the right number of words that the rest of us contributed. It does not matter. You gotta treat co-writing, creating collaboratively as enough of a ridiculous and mysterious moment that you can't begin to think your word, your line, your melody, your section of the song is worth more than another section. Because your great chorus with bad lyrics might not make it onto the record. But somehow that one line that they said that, you wrote the 8 other lines, but that one line may be the one that grabs the attention of the A&R guy at the label who says, dude, that connects with me. So just decide in advance, for my sake and for the goodness of the world, that at all times you sit down to co-write with somebody. It is always equal splits. I have seen relationships ended over that very discussion. Bands that are going in and trying to fight among themselves for what the worth of what's the worth of the specific parts that they brought to a discussion. I have seen co-writes never happen again because after the fact somebody said, hey, I feel like the hook idea that we brought in was probably worth a little more. Can we do like a 60-40 split instead? And they said, yeah, sure, we can totally do the song 60-40. And then they never got into the room to collaborate ever again. Because that was enough of an offense, enough of saying, I feel like my part was worth a little more than your part. Just don't even bother. Let the relationship matter more than the song. Treat the co-writing process as enough of a mystery that you can say, if you were in the room, you somehow have impacted the direction of this song, you get an equal cut. Now, the one place that is different sometimes in my world, sometimes A&R guys will set me up with a band. And they'll say in advance, I'm sending all 6 band members in there. Know in advance that the band is taking 50% and you're taking 50%. There's not going to be an equal split between the 7 of you in the room. We've decided in advance. That's a conversation that we will have outside of the room before you ever get into the room. That's not a conversation that you need to have with an artist in the room ever. Just decide. If you sit, and if we haven't had that conversation, I sit down with a band, it's always equal splits, regardless. As annoying as it is to me sometimes that the drummer just sat in the corner beating pencils on the table the entire time we were writing, doesn't matter. His pencils might have, influenced that one rhythm of the, probably not, but it's worth just deciding in advance to know your splits up front. Always equal splits for people in the room. Last one on this little list of 7 ridiculous things. Be brave. Creative collaboration requires vulnerability. Don't hang back and wait for the other person to do the work. Put your ideas out there. Songwriting collaboration has to be a dare to suck environment. You with me? Working to collaborate together to create something that matters in the world, you have got to be willing to take a risk. and say a line that you know is ridiculous. I will often say in the beginning of a session, if I start to feel a little awkward about something I put out there, I'll say, hey, I want you to know, today I'm going to say some stuff that is dumb. And the dumb things I say may be the bridge that we have to walk across to get to the brilliant thing. So I'm going to lay lots of dumb stuff out there so that we can walk right across it. Your willingness to do that will help the artist that you're writing with be willing to dare to suck as well. Your bad ideas can lead to something good. Keep a loose grip on your ideas. Say what you're thinking. Co-writing requires vulnerability. You got to trust your co-writers with some crazy stuff that comes up in your brain because it may trigger something great in their brain. Listen to this quote from Anne Lamott. The writing, she says, is where the gift is. Publication is not what centers us, but the time spent in the chair, reflecting, expressing, telling the truth. This is the gift. Choosing to sit down in a room with somebody and say, hey, let's create something together. Just that moment is the gift. That is the stuff that matters. Whether or not a song comes out of it is worth so much less. What matters in that moment is that moment. And the people that are in that moment and treating that moment with enough respect to turn your phone off and to try and focus in, to lean into that person, to really hear their story, to connect, to create, to reach for something beautiful, to dare to suck and be vulnerable and throw your ideas out there, to nod in agreement when they say something that moves you, to hold back when they say something that you can't quite get your soul connected to. That moment of creating is worth so much that it's worth letting go of publication, letting go of where the song goes automatically, and just treat the moment like it matters. All right, here's what I want to do. Little activity. This one's going to be solo. I'm not going to make you do this with somebody else. I'm going to ask you to write 5 things down. You may do this on a phone, you may do this on your laptop, you may do this on a piece of paper, you may do this in your brain if you are one of those people who just refuses to write things. Ready? I want you to write down the name of 5 artists in the genre that you love, that you connect with the most. 5 artists that you would love a chance to co-write with. And go. Getting close? Is that too difficult an assignment right off the bat? All right, next. I want you to write down the name of 5 unsigned artists that are in your world. Students, people that you know from back home, a band that's local that you really dig, somebody that is not connected to one of the majors, somebody who you feel like has ridiculous talent that surrounds you right now. This one may be a little more difficult. I want you to come up with 5 unsigned artists or bands that are around you that you feel like are ridiculously great and the world should hear who they are. And go. Okay. You can continue to think if you want to. The next assignment that you can do now if you're bored and online or later this week is to look back at the first 5 artists and figure out, based on their last record, based on the last couple of records, what percentage of the songs that are on their records have they co-written with an outside writer. Let me rephrase that. What percentage of the songs that they've written have they co-written with an outside writer other than the producer, other than the person who produced the record? Let's all admit something in this room together. We are the 1%. You are this rare, unique person who not only enjoys, but creates music. That makes you unlike most music consumers in the world. Those of us in this room right now are the people who always love track 8 on a new album that comes out way better than track 3, right? Because track 3 is always where the label puts the single. And we're so sick of how often they play the stupid single. But track 8 is where the artist was finally being honest, right? You and I are the 1%. We are not normal music consumers. Your sense of what you love and what is great is different than the 99%. John Mayer did a whole big thing about this at one of his Berkeley talks, about how much you and I, how much the 1% think that the rest of the world are dumb and that they're wrong, and if they only knew what we knew, they would like what we like, they would love the songs that we love as artists. You and I are the 1%. We like something that is different than most of the rest of the world. Here's your challenge. Those of you who are artists, those of you who are willing to write with other artists, you have got to help them find the 99%. Continuing to create things that will impress your friends and alienate the 99% will help them move their album sales from 800 copies all the way to 1,800 copies. Yeah! Which means that they will continue to have this tiny, narrow little impact on the world. Now, I want you to hear me say something early on in this process. This songwriting program at Belmont is focused on commercial songwriting. That does not just mean, what do we do to help a song make the maximum amount of money possible? When I sit down in a room to write a song with an artist, I could care less, or couldn't care less. Yeah, I struggle with that one. I don't give a rip how much money that song is going to make. You know what my deciding factor is when I get into that room? I want as many people as possible to hear this thing that we're creating. I want as many people as possible to hear it and to play it for their friends so that their friends can hear it. For me, writing in the gospel music world, writing a CCM pop song, I don't give a rip whether or not a radio station plays the song, but I do sit there thinking to myself, how do I get this truth into the hands of as many people as possible? That's not going to happen by me continuing to pitch wild, crazy curveballs that the catcher can't even catch. It also is not, I'm not going to service the world by continuing to lob little slow pitches over the plate. Okay, how do I just write the thing that the maximum number of people will pay $1.29 for? That doesn't help the world either. My job as a part of the 1% who represents the 99% is to help the artists that I'm writing with find the corners of the strike zone. Okay, I'm deep into baseball analogy at this point. Those of you who neither play baseball nor softball, I apologize. Let me just explain. Strike zone, you know, this tiny, strange, moving little box that a pitcher's trying to get a ball into so that the, well, I guess that's not always the goal, so that the calls a strike, and so that the batter at the plate will actually step up and take a swing, right? The goal is to try and strike out the guy at the plate. You want him to step in and swing, or you want him to stand there and watch while you do this beautiful pitch that goes right through the strike zone. That is the goal. Now, crazy wild pitch off to the side, it's going to be obvious that it's going crazy, and the batter's not going to swing at it, and the ump's not going to call it a strike. Nobody's going to take a swing at that. There may be 1% of people in the stadium who are like, dude, did you see how curvy cool that pitch was, right? And if pitchers were trying to attract the attention of the, did you see how crazy curvy that pitch was crowd, then they would not be successful as pitchers and would be kicked off the team, right? Our job is not to achy-breaky heart it over the middle of the strike zone with a slow ball. Our job is to help the artists that we're working with find the corners of the strike zone. The chances are, as a member of the 1%, you probably wrote down 5 artists that you would love to write with who would not be willing to write with you. The chances are they haven't co-written a song with anybody in a long, long time, and they're certainly not going to sit down with you to write a song. Now, that's not going to be exclusively true. There may be some of you who love commercial music so much, you're right down the middle of the strike zone of commercial music, and every artist that you want to write with is wandering up and down 16th right now going, I wish I could just find a co-writer. It may be very true. I have no idea. But my expectation is, as a music consumer and creator, that you probably really love artists who do not do that. Today, James and I and another guy sat through a morning of listening to people who are trying to get into the songwriting program at Belmont. And it was almost exclusively the songwriters that they love the most and the songs that have impacted them the most. It is all songwriters who do not co-write, and it is all songs that were written solo by the artists themselves. It was all super weird, cool, artsy, singer-songwritery kind of songs and artists all the way across the board. Those were the kind of songwriters and songs that they were most attracted to as a crowd. It's normal. That's who we are as music creators. I'm not asking you to become a fan of music that you don't like. But those of you who are artists, for a second, I want you to step outside of that enough and think about the successful artists around you. The last thing you want is for the artist that you love the most to be sitting in a room somewhere trying to figure out how to get more radio singles and trying to service radio and how do I get more fans to buy a copy of my songs. The last thing you want is for the artist that you love to be worried about that kind of crap. Am I right? We don't want the artists who are making the great music that inspires us to be sitting somewhere thinking about how to manipulate the system. You and I have not only an opportunity but a responsibility to walk into co-writing opportunities with the artists around us as representatives of the 99% so they don't have to think about it. Let me take the analogy away from baseball for a second to a place that I love even more, and that is the dinner table. As co-writers, you and I are responsible for helping the artists that are around us figure out how to put the steak that they're serving onto the fork that the 99% are using. I don't want an artist to have to think about that. I want to help them figure that out. Most of the phone calls that I get from A&R guys to walk into a room to do a co-writing session is somebody saying to me, we've got to find a radio single. There is not an artist on the planet who just can't come up with enough songs to fill up a record. That never happens. You could, right now, if I gave you an hour, create 48 minutes worth of music. I feel confident. It might be nonsensical and dumb, but I feel confident just about everybody in this room can come up with 48 minutes worth of material. When they call me to come sit in the room with the artist and the producer, it's because they're trying to find the radio. They're trying to find the 99%. How do we find a single? How do we help this artist elevate their game beyond the cool stuff that's going to impress their friends to something that the 99% will understand and want? My job is to then go in as the co-writer in supporting that artist, for them not to have to think about that, but for me to be the guy who's thinking about that. All right, that's the thing that you want to say. Let's figure out a way to say that in a way that the 99% are going to get. Let me take your crazy curveball and pull it back in toward the corners of the strike zone a little bit. The reason I asked you to write down 5 artists that you feel like are ridiculously talented that are right there around you right now, because the chances are you are not going to be able to get into the room with the first 5 that you wrote down. But the next 5 that you write down are not going to make it without great songs. So what if you decided to become their representative? To become their advocate, helping those artists find the 99%. Find songs that are going to hit the maximum number of people. You do have, you're not going to have an opportunity to sit down in a room and co-write with Casey Musgroves this week. I can almost guarantee you that's not going to be an opportunity for you. But her replacement, the artist that she is the most freaked out by at this point in her young career, is quite possibly sitting next to you in this room, if not in your dorm room or wandering up and down the road right now trying to find somebody willing to invest in them. I told you that most of the producers are on songs these days, right? You are surrounded by great producers in this environment at Belmont, and you've got to figure out who they are. Because the stuff they're producing in the studios at Belmont is going to continue to stay mediocre as long as the songs are mediocre. So much of the work that I do right now is getting phone calls either from A&R guys who are saying, come write with our artists, or from producers saying, I'm in the middle of working on this album, we got to find great lyrics, will you come sit down with us with this artist? They're producing a killer track, they've got a new artist that they're trying to develop. It's time for those of us who are songwriters, those of us who are chasing after a career in commercial songwriting, to become the artist developers that do not exist anymore. There's not a whole lot of artist development going on anymore. So that means you and I have to become those people. Find the talent that is around you and begin helping them find great songs. Some of you are artists yourself. You're desperate for somebody around you to please help you come and find great songs. Maybe that starts by choosing some ridiculous talent around you and beginning to invest your talents in their future as well. Let's move forward, shall we? Because I want us to get into a little more activity, and I've been rambling on incoherently for like 45 minutes already.
You might want to play songs sometime.
I definitely don't want to do that, because then this whole room is going to judge me.
Song.
This whole room is going to be like, yeah, I see what you're doing there.
Sorry, I brought it up.
Yeah, that's it. Then this whole room would say, that was track 3 on the record, wasn't it? Yes, it was. All right, I want to divide the rest of our time into 3 sections here, thinking about co-writing process with an artist. I want to focus your attention on what it means to co-write with an artist, with you in the support role with that artist. I want us to talk a little bit about what happens before that co-write happens. I want us to talk a little bit about showing up for the appointment itself, and then the actual co-writing itself. Some tips to be able to make that a little more productive, and we'll get active here in a second. Let me try and blast through some things quickly. This section ought to be easy, and I'll move fast. You get an opportunity to write with another artist, you need to know their catalog thoroughly. These are all things that you need to work on before you get to show up in a room with an artist. Know their catalog in advance. You need to know what has worked and what hasn't. What songs have they written that have been great? What song did they do at the pop showcase last semester that was killer, that you need to figure out how to improve upon and or replicate? What were their hits on the last record? For me, I've got to know the radio singles that this artist has already had. When I walk into a room to sit down with an artist and start suggesting things that they did 2 years ago and had success at radio, I'm out before we even start. Know their catalog thoroughly. Here's another one. Know their vocal range before you get in. An artist who has recorded anything already, this is not hard for you to do. To sit down with an artist's catalog, to pull them up on Spotify and begin to hear, gosh, she is just super strong up here. That's every one of her choruses are going to like B, C, C sharp. That's about her range for big power. That means that a verse is going to be down here. So man, let me make sure that I'm starting down here with her on the verse. You need to know in advance what are the power spots for the artist that you're working with. Where are the places that their voice really shines? And I'll tell you this as well. Want to make a co-write work well with the artists around you, just a tiny bit of genuine flattery goes a long way. To be able to start a session saying, I love the way your voice sounds up in this kind of range right here, so let's save that. Let's save that moment, the big power that's in your voice for this moment that's going to happen later in the chorus. Let's find something warm down here in this part of your range to write this verse around. Know their range before you get into the session. Next one. Know where they are in the process. Know what their needs are in advance. What is their label looking for? Who's producing this album? Who are the gatekeepers for this project? Sadly, these days, just writing a great song doesn't help. You have to write a song that their gatekeeper thinks is a great song. Is Daddy paying for this album? Then the chances are Daddy's got to really like this song for it to get paid for. Their A&R guy, who is it that is their gatekeeper? What kind of stuff has the gatekeeper really liked in the past? Last one, and this is a biggie. Don't be scared to prepare ideas in advance with an artist in mind. Maybe that's a list of titles. Maybe that is a track that you have started building in the studio. Maybe it is just a melody that you feel like they would sound great singing. Maybe it's a verse and a chorus you've started with them in mind. Or even, and I've done this so many times in the last couple of years, a song that you dismantle and refinish with them. It is a trick, perhaps. Perhaps this is manipulative. I have probably at least 5 times in the last 12 months alone walked into a session and said, hey, I got this like verse and a chorus started. I wonder if you would listen to this and see if it's worth kind of re-finding this song. Let's find the second verse, see if we can find a cool bridge for the song. It allows the artist that I'm working with to feel ownership of the song. I already had a second verse written. I already had a bridge written. The song was finished, but having them participate in the creation of the song mattered more than me maintaining the integrity of this beautiful thing that I created on my own. So it meant that I took a song that already existed and just kept the best parts, allowed them in on the song. In fact, to be honest, I almost never finish a song anymore. As a guy who works just professionally as a collaborative co-writer, all of what I do, honestly, these days, is really sitting down in a room with somebody else to write a song. It means there's no point in me finishing a song by myself anymore. The world that I work in, it means that, especially in kind of the pop and AC and contemporary Christian world, that co-writing with the artist is almost mandatory for a song to get cut these days in my world. I can't just write a great song. There's a handful of artists that will take 100% outside song these days. For me, it's not even worth it. If I get a great idea going, I immediately begin turning that song toward the artist that it would be great for and stop after a verse and a chorus. Or stop after 2 verses and a chorus, leave the bridge open so that they can come and participate in the song. I wish it weren't that way, but the truth is I know that they're going to want to have some participation in the creation of the song, and not finishing a song means that I can leave that open for them. All right, let's talk about the appointment itself. The first 15 minutes, 45 minutes of you sitting down to co-write with another artist, and I'm going to give you a little difficult activity to do. Truth is, the first 15 to 45 minutes of any co-writing session that you do with an artist, whether you know them already or not, is a counseling session, and you've got to treat it that way. To be able to create adequately, sitting in a room with somebody requires such an intense level of vulnerability that you have to decide to treat it tenderly like a counselor would. Now, I have a little leg up on this because my wife is a family and marriage therapist. My oldest brother is a counselor. My mother is a psychologist. My house is not a safe environment to say, I had the weirdest dream last night. I am surrounded by therapists, and so maybe this bent on the world has already been programmed into my brain. But I know that if I can, in the first 15 minutes, in the first 45 minutes, help an artist feel safe, feel like this is a safe environment for me to just be who I am, for me to tell my story, I know that the song is going to go places that it wouldn't if we were just trying to fill some open slot on their album. That first 15 minutes to 45 minutes matters. Don't rush it. Don't waste it. A couple little pieces here. Be fully present. I already talked about that, but you can't imagine how much it matters, especially if you're taking the one-down position with an artist and saying, I'm here to support what you're doing, for you to let that artist know right off the bat. It doesn't matter how distracted they are. There's this thing in me that when somebody checks Instagram, I gotta check Instagram. It is like a yawn, right? I cannot not check my phone when I see somebody else checking my phone. It doesn't matter how distracted they are in the room. Be the person who is there to attend to them. It will matter as far as their willingness to be vulnerable. Body language matters as well. Just as much as it does in this very room tonight. This move at the start of a co-write doesn't work. It doesn't work for helping the artist that you're working with feel like they're in a safe environment to be who they are. But this one does. I'm telling you, I feel like this is so dumb to suggest that the actual co-writing process would be different if you're sitting forward in your chair and open than if you're all slouched and folding your arms like you just don't give a crap. I'm telling you, it matters. It doesn't make sense to me that it would matter, but in those first few moments, you demonstrating even physically, posture-wise, a forward, open, engaged posture actually does make a difference. Next one, learn to ask good questions. Sitting down and co-write requires you, that first 15 to 45 minutes, to learn how to ask great questions. I actually used to have, I think it was on this finger, a little ring my wife got me at the French Quarter in New Orleans that had a cue from an old-timey typewriter wrapped in metal and stuck on a little thing on my finger for the purpose of trying to remind me to ask good questions, because as a therapist, she has a PhD in asking good questions, right? Her job is to know how to ask great questions, and I'm just bad at that. I will get back home at the end of the day. I went to the hospital to visit a friend, and my wife's like, well, what did they say? What did the doctor say? Well, how long are they going to be in the hospital? I'm always like, I don't know. They had chicken fried steak for lunch. I'm so bad at really attending and asking good questions that she's trying to train me better. So I spent a long time wearing a cue on my finger for that very reason, with the hope of trying to ask good questions. I'm going to make you do this with somebody else you don't know in the room, so you might as well start thinking through how this is going to work for you. Let me give you some good ones. I want to figure out how to offer an ear not advice. Somebody being willing to start opening up and telling you about their day, telling you their story, does not mean that they are looking for advice from you. It means that they need somebody to listen. You need to listen like a songwriter listens. You can actually get somebody talking about the stuff that matters to them. You need to be listening in the things they say for titles. Listening in the things they say for big ideas that you can wrap a song around. Because you know that if they're feeling that, if they're actually talking to you about something from their day, they're talking about something they already feel emotionally, you can figure out how to write a song that is already moving them emotionally, you're already down the road. A great counselor knows how to ask questions that lead a person toward self-discovery. Here's some options. How did it make you feel when he said that? Right? That says, rather than me responding to this thing, like they said something to you, right? I couldn't believe what he said to me this morning. You're saying, yeah, it's dumb that he would say that. Instead of you offering your judgment of the situation, asking that how question draws them deeper into the story, gets them expressing a feeling in that moment that's turning their attention away from just the reaction to the moment to more of the emotion of the moment, and that's what you got to find. If you're going to write a song that matters, it's got to be something that the artist feels. Asking how questions matter. How do you wish you had responded when he said that? How do you think they would have responded if you had ... Why questions imply judgment. So try who questions, what questions, when questions, where questions, how questions. Artists are dreamers. Ask questions to get their creative juices flowing. You're just getting to know the artist that you're sitting down with. What are your plans for the next year? What are you hoping this next album does different from the last thing you were working on? Okay, if you had an unlimited budget, what would you do on this album you guys are about to do that you're not planning on doing right now? I mean, if money was no object, what would you do with this album you guys are about to record? If you hadn't become an artist, what would you be doing right now? What do you wish you had more time in your schedule to do? What's God taught you lately about who you are? What's God taught you lately about who He is? If you knew that this was your last day on earth, how would you spend it? I'm telling you, even out of the blue, as you were just getting to know another artist, doing your casual, stupid questions, to just interject, hey, I've got a ridiculous question. Let me just ask this to get to know you a little better. If this were the last day on earth, this may not work in all circumstances. They think you're a stalker who's about to kill them. If this were your last day on earth, how would you want to spend it? What would you want to be doing today? I'm telling you, there are brilliant song ideas in the artist's answer to that question, because I have stolen them before. If you could have 3 wishes, what would they be? What's an album you're listening to lately that I should really hear? Tell me the story of a fan you've met along the road in the last few months. Describe, for me, the ideal fan of your band. If you're going to be able to service them as a co-writer, getting to know what their fans are like actually matters. Even the smallest garage band who is banging out a demo in their dorm room at Pembroke right now still has, it may only be 5 fans, but they have 5 fans. And they not only have 5 fans, one of those 5 fans is a super fan. You know what I'm talking about, right? Super fan who you know they could sneeze onto a recording, and a super fan would not only buy a copy, but they would give copies to their family at Christmas. Every band, no matter how small, has a super fan. So, asking the artist that you're writing with, describe for me your super fan. What do they like? What do they like to do? What are the fears that your fans carry around? If you had to say something to one of your super fans right now that would make them have a better day tomorrow, what would it be? Those kind of questions to get an artist dreaming in the first 15 to 45 minutes of a session will change the direction of your session. And when they answer, you need to learn active listening. Do you guys know what active listening is? Have you ever heard of drive-through talking before? Have you ever driven through a fast food restaurant in your life? All right? Those little computer screens at some restaurants did not always exist. In some cases, go ahead, James, give me your Starbucks order again. What do you want right now?
I want a caramel frappa latte with no milk but goat cheese.
Okay, you want goat cheese in your caramel frappa latte, is that right? Okay. Drive-through talking means that I take in what you have just said to me and I repeat it back to you to confirm that I got it right. That's what drive-through talking is. It's what active listening is in a relationship, in a friendship, in a marriage. It means that you say back to them what you heard them saying and give them the opportunity to say, no, I didn't mean goat cheese. What I meant was hog's head cheese. I want hog's head cheese in my caramel latte. That's the most disgusting thing I have ever come up with in my life, but I'm going to try. Active listening means you repeat back to them what you hear them saying and give them an opportunity to fix it, to make sure that you got it right. It also re-engages them in the conversation. It has gives you the opportunity to take it to the next step. Let's say they give you an answer. What would you do if this was your last day on earth? And they say back to you, I would eat spaghetti. Like from the time I woke up until the time the sun set, I would just eat spaghetti. And you would say back to them, you would eat spaghetti all day? Spaghetti? I mean, are we talking like your mom's spaghetti, or are we talking just like out of a can SpaghettiOs kind of spaghetti, right? You have active listening means you're repeating back to them to confirm that you've heard correctly and understood, and then elevating to the next level where that conversation is going. You get what I'm doing here? I'm telling you easy ways to make your dating relationships better as well. This is more than just a songwriting session. You have to know. All right, here's what I want us to do. Let me throw this one. I can't really teach this one, but let me throw this in anyway. You got to figure out how to be vulnerable yourself without making the conversation about you. For some reason, it is difficult for those of us who are creative people to let an hour, much less a 5-minute conversation, be all about somebody else. And in this environment especially, where you're collaborating with an artist for the sake of writing something that changes the world for them as an artist, it is necessary for you to be vulnerable without turning the story to being about you. It is instinctive in me, and I hear this all the time in other people, and it annoys me in other people, which is how I know I'm doing it. Somebody begins to respond to my story with a story about their own life that it made them think of. You know, I've also been to Nepal, and when I went to Nepal, right, it's super annoying to me, which is how I know I do it. It is difficult for all of us. Those of us who are artists are instinctively self-centered. We love ourselves a lot. It's just who we are. In fact, honestly, it's one of the things that helps you become an artist. Your ability to really like you helps you be a better artist. I don't know why that's true, but it is true. And that means you got to turn that part of your brain off. When you are co-writing with an artist, you got to figure out a way to be vulnerable and personal without turning the conversation to be all about you. I don't know how to teach you that other than to just say, try it. Try to figure out ways to continue to plus the conversation with them without making it all about you. All right. Yep.
I have a question to go on, but
Please.
has there ever been a situation where you walk in and you start like doing that therapeutic stuff, and they're just like, let's just get to the song?
Yeah, absolutely. That almost always happens when there's already a depth of relationship. Like they've come in, they have a limited time, they want to just get to it. That almost never happens though, and I would say, I think I can be safe in saying this never happened to me with an artist that I was writing with for the first time. That maybe if there was already depth of relationship, they could just shut that off and be like, forget it, we're not going to talk about that stuff, let's just write the song. But almost always, it's such a vulnerable environment anyway, that I think it's pretty safe to say, unless I already knew them, that nobody has ever shut it down before.
I would be kind of worried that they would just be like, yeah, let's just get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may happen, and you got to figure out a way to develop relationships. I'll tell you this as well. For all of you in here, co-writing a song is such a personality-driven thing. You'll get into co-writing sessions with somebody, and it just doesn't work, and you just don't connect, and you don't connect with their personality, and they don't like you, and the co-write's not going to go well, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad writer or that they're a dumb artist. It may just be that the chemistry is not there, and you just move on, and they're annoyed by your personal questions, and they decide to move on. The point of questions like this are to try and build that bridge anyway. You got to figure out a way to build a supportive bridge with the artist you're with so that they feel comfortable enough to write a song with you. Because I can tell you, if they're not willing to go there, if they're not willing to be personal and honest and real, you're not going to write a very good song that day. As long as it stays at the surface, it's not going to be a very good one. I'm going to make you stretch yourself a little bit. To start with, I want you to pair up with one person right there next to you, somebody that is already in your area. Some of you are going to have to move a little bit to do this. I'm going to give you a total of 90 seconds to do something. I will give you 15 seconds to get towards someone. Everybody needs to have a partner scenario. Who have you got to?
That's my guitar.
All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to decide, based on the both of your last names, whoever's last name is closest to the letter Z is now the artist in your pair. Figure that out and go. All right, figure that out. Now, here's what I want you to accomplish. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds for you to start asking questions and figure out a way to build a bridge. If you ended up next to somebody that you don't know, treat this person like a real person. This is not just an exercise like you're pretending that they are an artist. I mean, figure out their name. Start to build a bridge. Ask good questions. Try and build some relationship. Ready? On your mark, get set, and awkward. Okay, first question is, tell me a question that you were asked just now that you thought was brilliant. Yep.
How did you get your name?
Okay, sweet. That requires not only something personal from you, but something historical inevitably. Like, right? What's going on in your family? That helps me know a little bit more about your past, your connection with the rest of your family. Anybody else ask just a really great question? I don't want one that you asked. I want the one that was asked to you. Yeah.
What would you do on your last day?
Okay. All right. Went with the last day alive, just before I kill you question. Good. It sounded like a creepier question when it came out than I intended. So if you knew you were going to die in 17 minutes, that's how long it takes for the poison to kick in. What else? Anybody? Asked a great one? All right. Here's what I want you to do. Now, it's going to be easy for you to just fake your way out of this, but I'm going to stretch it anyway. I want you to get up, and I want you to move to the opposite side of the room and just claim somebody and have a seat. Ready? On your mark, get set, you. All right, have a seat. Now, those of you who were the artist in the last scenario, you need to tell the person you're with that you cannot be the artist in this scenario. Inevitably, some of you will be two artists together in a pair. Some of you will be two non-artists together in a pair. Same rule applies. The person whose last name starts with the letter closest to Z becomes the artist in your group. And I want you to try this again. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. And a couple of minutes this time means you're going to have to take it further. Keep trying to figure out ways to practice active listening. Repeat back what the person says. Let that take you to a next question. Don't do this like you're a reporter asking a series of questions. Try and let your questioning develop naturally. You don't have to be quick with your answers. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. I want you to build a little rapport with the person sitting next to you. Are you ready? On your mark, get set, go Bruins. Everybody, wait, let me add one more thing to the scenario that I forgot that I just saw on the page. Here's what happens next. In this process, I'll give you this 15 seconds back here in just a second. In this process, if you are in the support role, I want you to write down at least one, or as many as you want, song ideas based on what you hear the person saying. You don't have to write it down in the moment. If you want to grab a hold of it, if you want to be scribbling notes as they talk, find a brilliant idea worth writing a song about from the answers that they give as you continue the conversation. That means you need to be asking good questions, practicing active listening, and paying attention like a songwriter does for great story elements, for story arc, for places of tension and release. Listen close. Ready? I'll give you a couple more minutes and go. Alright, now, without having to explain where you're going with the idea, somebody tell me a song idea you wrote down in that process. Go.
The skin and bones of home.
Huh. Yep.
Different lifestyle.
Okay. What else? What'd you grab from what they were saying? Hey, you realize, those of you who are willing to say this, is the artist that you're working with probably doesn't know what you grabbed and what they were saying. So this will be illuminating to them as well. Go.
Pancakes make everything better.
It's an IHOP commercial, actually.
How did you get so pretty?
Nice. Anybody else?
The war of daytime.
Huh. Okay.
That's cool.
Yep.
loud music.
Okay. Yep.
Beyond the background?
Okay. What you got?
Now you know me.
Okay. Huh. Anybody else? Yeah.
Undeclared.
Okay. Brilliant. It's a good college song. Admissions will love it. Yes, sir.
Small towns and big cities.
Okay. What you got?
Mistaken identities.
Okay. Yep.
Not going home for the first time.
Okay. Wow. What else? Yep.
You can see through to the bottom.
Okay. Yep.
Afraid to fly?
Okay. What you got? Anybody else?
Me and my guitar.
Okay. Yep.
Least wine in a coffee shop.
Like it. Honestly, you never know where these, if you started to try and write that story with the person who's sitting across from you, it may be that you spend 30 seconds going down that road and realize, we're not writing this. It may be that that title begins to make sense in light of somebody else's story. When I've prepared to sit down with an artist, gone through a list of titles, I keep in Evernote for me now. What used to be in the back of one of those notebooks is now an Evernote document for me, so that I've got it on my phone or my iPad or my laptop. Piles and piles of titles and big song ideas. And inevitably, sitting down in the first 15, 20 minutes of a co-writing session, I'm writing all kinds of ridiculous nonsense down. And sometimes the artist will say, what you working on over there? And I'll say, well, nothing. Just writing down something you said that I'm going to use with that artist I'm writing with next week. That has happened multiple times where somebody has said something brilliant and it hasn't been for that artist. It's been for another artist, but they said something that inspired something in me that could come to life in another place. Or you begin plussing that story that you just came up with that artist to help them find something they want to say. The lament of not going home at Christmas for the first time. The pain of sitting alone in a coffee shop. I mean, it may be that in that moment, helping that artist plus that thought is going to bring something brilliant to life if you're paying attention well and listening like a songwriter does. You guys get, those of you who write songs, you don't have permission to listen to the stories of your friends anymore like people around you who are not songwriters. I hope this doesn't sound manipulative, because it is, but it means that when somebody's telling you a story, you're a songwriter. It's what you do. You listen like a songwriter for those little nuggets, for the little phrases they say and the rhythm of the way those phrases move. You don't get to watch movies the way everybody else watches movies anymore. You watch movies like a songwriter does. Listening for the way that tension and release happens in that story, for the phrase that they say that inspires something in you that you can bring into that session in the next week. Sorry, I'm preaching a whole nother sermon that is not related to this sermon. But at least in your co-writing sessions, learn to listen like a songwriter. Listen for the things that move you. Watch for the ways when the artist you're sitting with says something and you can see that it moves. You can see on their face that it moves them to be experiencing that. And figure out a way to bring that to life. James, you want to tell the story you just told me about that Miss McKidd's...
Well, I won't say this specific
Sure.
person, but a friend of mine, a big writer, was writing with an artist in a big rock band. And it just the same thing about questions, and it got to the children and certain, so that it just came out of the talking and the story things important in his life. And he also asked him about, what song do you wish you'd written? And so it all kind of came together in the course of the first hour, and then throughout the day they wrote a song that the artist really likes, probably be on the next record. So
Like
it's
it
this kind of discussion, questioning, interaction that we've been talking about.
Sensing early in the process that this artist had begun to talk about something that was a pretty deep longing inside. And once you can sense that that's happening, artists have got to find songs that move them. If the artist is not moved by the stuff that they're singing, there's just no point. So finding something that already is beginning to stir in the spirit of the artist that's going to deliver that song, and then helping them craft that into something that the 99% will dig, you're heading down a good road.
One other thing the artist said that was interesting is that the songwriter was asking the artist, who's also a writer, about the audience and who you write for, and he says, I only write songs for me.
Huh.
And they've sold a ton of people have connected with it. He said, I don't really concern myself about it. It's what I want to write about. It's about me. And then the fans have found them and loved the stories. But So it's different for different artists, and that's something that's good to know early on.
Yeah.
So-
That's also great, thinking about yourself in the co-writing role. You need the artist that you're working with to assume that nobody cares about the song. This isn't about the radio. This isn't about you selling copies. This is just you writing songs that you like, and let me be the guy as a co-writer who is helping to shape this into something that the world is actually going to connect with. Because you'd be surprised with a subtle change of language in a song, how you can take something that still feels powerful to the artist, that connects specifically with their story, but also connects with the 99%. Do you have a question earlier?
Well, I was just gonna ask, do you always start with like a title like that or an idea instead of like jamming and then like being inspired by the music to find a lyric?
For me, most of the time, I want to know what the North Star of the song is before we get too deep into it. Again, for commercial songwriting specifically, I need to know that we're going to get to a hook that matters. I don't want to ramble on for 45 seconds worth of a verse that we get to a chorus that's just mediocre when we get there. So in general, for me, whether or not the artist even knows it, I usually start my thinking process around what the big idea is going to be. It may not be the title, but I need to know what the big idea is so I can know what kind of ornaments I want to hang on that tree,
Okay.
So that's the way it starts for me. I keep titles and big ideas, big lines that are going to build the hook of a song for me in the forefront pretty much. In fact, sometimes what that looks like for me is even if it's just a sentence, I'll write that sentence across the top of my page. A friend of mine who's a great lyric writer here in town calls that North Star. Identifying what the North Star of the song is from the beginning so that you can use that to guide every line of the song. Is every line that we're writing helping us move toward the North Star? And if not, then maybe it's superfluous and we need to write something else. Because when you're writing the first 20 or 30 songs of your career as a songwriter, it is normal for them to be about everything. It's like, you're like, I just want to write a love song, so for 3.5 minutes I'm going to say everything I've ever known about love, all in one song, right? It's easy to do that when you're starting out, but once you get 20 or 30 songs down the road, you start realizing, wow, for this 3.5 minutes, what if we really just focused on this one big idea that matters? And I would say that almost all great hit songs that I have heard in my life are built around one big solid idea. It's not rambling philosophical points about 20 different things. It's like, man, that song is about this thing. So that's the way it is for me anyway. I tend to anchor things around one title or big idea. Anybody else with questions before we step forward? Yep.
I don't know if we've hit on this, but like, I guess maybe like dealing with emotions when you're going through songwriting, is that something you're gonna hit on, or?
No.
Okay,
Ask a question.
I just,
Unless you ask it.
I've noticed there's times when I can write a song and maybe it's like, it's more of like a more chill song, and by the end of it, I'll just be like, just ecstatic. And I'm like, woo, and then there's like times when I'm writing a song, we're doing like a little like back and forth talking before we get like one line down, and I'm like, ah, and I just can't like, is it okay to be like that? Or like, you gotta like keep yourself together?
Yes, it is okay for you to be like that. Please never co-write with me. I have had artists who bawl crying in the beginning of a co-write session, and it is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's usually because they show up and seeing it's me. It's not you.
I got set up with you today.
I guess is there like, because you're saying to be comfortable with the person you're with, but is there maybe like a level of professionalism you also need to hold?
That depends entirely on the relationship. That
Okay.
depends on where you are in the relationship with the person that you're writing with. And I would then reinforce that point from the 7 undeniable rules of co-writing from earlier, that the relationship has got to matter more than the song. And it means if you get to talking to somebody, you're sitting down in a room together working on a song, and you realize the time is better spent in the big picture of life, actually just dealing with the stuff that you're talking about and not worrying about output, not worrying about having a 3.5-minute pop song written by the end of the session, to let the relationship matter more than the song in that case. But yeah, certainly and again, that's going to be hard to teach. If you're one of those people who overshares and is going to just randomly begin crying in the first 30 minutes of you meeting a new person, I can't probably seminar that out of you, unfortunately. But I do think it does matter to at least pay attention to the unique dynamic of that relationship between you and the person that you're writing with.
Well, for damage control, I swear I'm not crazy. So, just so we're clear.
You realize, of course, that that's the
Yeah, I know, yeah.
most crazy people say, right?
Yeah.
Now look, I'm not crazy, but, or my favorite, I'm not a stalker, but. That sentence never ends well. All right, let's spend a little time actually talking about we are just now getting to the process of this co-writing session where you would actually be writing a song. Do I need to let you guys go back to where you were sitting earlier? Are you guys all freaked out that you're sitting next to people? No, now you're deep friends because you just shared personal stories with one another. All right, stay where you are and I'll have you move here again in a little bit. I want us to talk for a second about the actual process of co-writing, developing the song once you're in the midst of it. You spend some time developing a relationship, finding something worth writing about with the person. Let's talk about the writing process and what it means to be a collaborative influencer. The goal of co-writing with an artist is not for you to find something you love, but to find the perfect balance between great songwriting and something that the artist you're writing with loves. Finding something that they love but it's not a good song doesn't help you, doesn't help them, it's not going to get recorded in the long run. Finding something that you love, but the artist that you're working with is not excited about, is not going to get cut either. There's no point in writing that song. And I have certainly had that happen before, where I felt like we got to the end of it and I realized, I am so much more excited about this than the artist is, and I've just wasted that session. It means that that song is not going to be recorded. So the trick for you as a collaborative influencer in working on co-writing with an artist is to find something that represents both great songwriting and that they, as an artist, love. Those are your two guiding principles when it comes to actually creating this piece of work. All right, some tools to help that process happen. You guys know what it means to plus an idea. This is a Pixar idea, one of their brainstorming collaborative work kind of ideas, called plussing. Plussing is this. Yes, and, right? I'm going to take a thing that you say, I'm going to yes it, and I'm going to and it. I'm going to plus your idea, rather than you sitting to create with someone and you suggest a line of a song. You say, the pink flower in her hair was wilted. And they say, that's dumb, I wouldn't say that, right? That's not going to help the process move forward. As a collaborative influencer, your job is to yes and your way toward a great idea. Man, I saw this demonstrated with an artist on Friday, brilliantly. Where a producer, it was me, two members of this band, and the producer. And lead singer for the band said a line that I just thought to myself inside, that's the dumbest thing I've ever... Why would you even think that would be worth singing? The producer, on the other hand, said, ooh, and what if we said it like this? And restated the thing that the artist had just said in a way that I thought, dang! Like it actually, somehow, what he was able to do that I wasn't able to do in that moment was to take this idea that looked like a turd when it came out of the mouth of the artist, and he turned it into fertilizer to grow something beautiful, right? As a collaborative influencer, he was able to plus that idea into something more than it was beforehand, and the artist responded like it was his idea. He responded like, yeah, dude, right? Right? And I was like, your idea was stupid. So somehow the producer was able to do, I didn't say that, I mean, I thought that. I mean, I condemned him in my head. Our job as collaborative influencers, as co-writers, working with the artists that we get an opportunity to work with, is to try and figure out a way to plus the things that they're saying toward something brilliant. Plussing means yes, and. It means you take something mediocre, something cliche, some cryptic bit of ridiculous poetry that the artist you're working with says, and move it forward into something stronger. Plussing always emphasizes forward movement. It's not your idea, it's not their idea, it is the positive interaction of forward movement in the collaboration process. All right? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to do another little activity. I'm going to give you a chorus and ask you to plus it towards something great with one other person. Ready? And move to the opposite side of the room again. You go back where you were sitting in the first place if you would like. Are you at least paired up with somebody, if not three-personed up with somebody? Everybody have somebody? Everybody have somebody. No? We're good? All right. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Okay, so in a class last semester, I was handed the following lyric. I want you to plus this thing back and forth towards something great. Don't shoot it down and talk about how dumb it is, like I did and made a student cry. I want you to, I didn't say it was dumb. So here's the scenario, right? Since James is here, let me just protect myself a little bit. So we're doing a song critique day, right? 17 students in this Songwriting 101 class. I'm trying to do 17 song critiques in one 2-hour night class. So I'm not even looking up, right? We're just blasting through song critique time. So this kid sings this chorus of this song on his little work tape, and I, without even thinking about it, just said, man, I'll be honest, if I heard this song on the radio, I would assume this artist obviously has no idea what love is actually like. And he was a freshman in a room of mostly upperclassmen, and I basically just said to all the girls in the room, this guy's obviously a relationship idiot. And I looked up just as his face melted. He didn't bawl, it was like this actually. I was like, oh dear God! Maestro! So, I'm going to hand you the lyric to the chorus of this song. There's not much to it. If you heard him singing it, you would agree. This is a guy who's clearly never been in love before. But let me hand you this chorus lyric. You guys scribble it down if you got something in front of you. And I want you to practice plussing. I want you to just start throwing stuff. Be vulnerable. Just start throwing ideas back and forth. I want you to yes and this chorus towards something great. Yes, and what if we said this? Yes, and what if that line changed to this? Yes, and what if we took this word and did this with it? Yes, and what if we put an adjective in front of each of those verbs? Ready? Here's the chorus lyric. Where is it? All I want is you. All I need is you. All I feel is you. All I miss is you. There's your chorus lyric. I'm about to give you, right? I'm about to give you a whopping 3 minutes. You will get 3 minutes flat to plus this chorus lyric toward something else. Yes, and go! Alright, let's land the plane. Did any of you feel like you just turned that into something brilliant? Confident. What you got?
But we're not. Okay. Alright. All I miss is the good times past. All I feel is coldness coming through. All I want is something to last. All I miss is you. Or all I need is you.
Gotcha. Alright, brilliant. Anybody else get something that you feel like you were able to plus this towards something that works? Go ahead.
All I want is you, but all I seem to get is a tightness in my chest. Drink and regret the way you smoke cigarettes. And Lord, I miss you.
Okay. Seem a little hesitant about the last line there, but the artist delivers that at the end like. Okay, so obviously, yep. You want to share?
Do it. But how can I go on when this house is not a hall? I still hear your voice in these hallways I walk. How can I keep living when my heart wants to keep giving all of my love to you?
Wow, there's almost nothing of the original lyric.
Well, we went more off the emotion of it.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let me just say for a second that this is what plussing means. It doesn't mean you have to just take the words and rearrange them. It means you find a place to go from there. It means you say to yourself, all right, I see what you're trying to say here. What if we said that same thing this way? A complete departure from the idea that they give you is not bad. It means that you're helping this artist feel like the thing that they said moved you toward the thing that you wrote, right? The point is not to say, okay, let me take the 5 words you said and rearrange them into brilliance. It means you plus that idea into something that you feel like moves you or moves them as you work through it. Yeah.
I was just gonna share a line.
Do it.
Okay, we kind of did the same thing they did. To have your hand in mine is like watching the sky explode. With the way I feel when you call my name, I miss the things we could have had. I left it all inside your bags. All I need is you.
Okay, cool. So you picked All I Need Is You as kind of a foundational thing you want to build around and figured out a new way to get there. So talk to me about the process of plussing. Obviously, I was joking with you guys up front about forcing yourself to yes, and trying to be super intentional about that. It is difficult to do. It is more natural to go, I don't really like that, let's keep looking, right? Did you find, let me rephrase that. Did the person next to you find an interesting way? Because you weren't just doing that with this kid's lyrics. You were doing that with the things that each other said too, right? You had to be the one who either said, yes, I like that, let's write it down, or yes, but what if we said it this way too? What if we took it this extra direction, right? So did the person that you're writing with, did you feel redirected? Could you notice the ways they were redirecting the stuff that you said? Do you feel that process of even, there is probably a little sense in you as you were going through that, if you were willing to, with no rapport built with the person you're sitting next to necessarily at all, to throw a line out there and they plussed it, they yes-anded it, that it made you feel like, oh, they must not have liked what I said too, right? Without some foundation there, it would be easy for us to wander into that because that was quick. Plussing as a tool for you in the co-writing process is meant to not be a way to just keep rewriting something into infinity, but a tool that you can use to take something that you're handed and figure out a way to move it toward greatness. Finding the essence of it and reapproaching it from a whole nother way, taking a key phrase, a key line, and building new things around it, even taking the existing stuff and adding a few pieces to the phrase to just try and rebuild the structure of a sentence so that it lands differently in a melody. Plussing can also work in a melodic sense. I know that I've been talking a lot about lyric. Most of the work that I do is as a lyricist, so it always falls to lyric examples for me. In a melody, I've seen that happen brilliantly as well, where you're working with an artist, they sing something great. You say, I love the way that landed in your voice. Because that one word, there's that one adjective in that last line that I want us to draw attention to. Could you do can we just put some emphasis on that one line? Plussing says, I'm going to take this thing that you've sung and let me figure out a way to change a note to take it to the next level, rather than just saying, I don't sing that, sing something else. To actually take the thing that they've done and figure out a way to plus it. Or recognizing that they're singing something and it feels like this is too complex for this line. To plus it rather than saying, nah, the lyric doesn't work with that melody at all. The plus idea is a way to say, ooh, I really like the way that lands. What if we did half the number of notes? Let's do half of those syllables. So instead of da-da-da-da, what if we make those longer notes? I love the melody and the way you sang that. What if you took it to da-da, da-da. So I'm going to take this thing that you've sung and I'm going to make you feel part of this and make sure that you know that I like this thing that you're singing, but let me shape it into something that may give us a little more economy of lyric later. Get where we're going with plussing? Plussing is a tool that you can use to help the artist that you're writing with feel like the song is moving forward rather than just you're not liking the junk that they write. All right? We do one or two more little tidbits and let's end before 8 o'clock rolls around. Let me just throw this in. This is not activity-based, but at least let me say this. You're going to have to learn in this process, probably even have experienced that in some of what I've had you do here in the last hour and a half, that sometimes you just got to let go of the way that you would say it differently and just let a line live. The truth is, the English language is a funny thing. Not only based on where we grew up, but even based on the way our families used language, based on the books that you like reading, based on the junk that you listen to on the radio, you are going to say any given sentence differently than I would say it. There are words that if I wrote them down on the page for a lyric, I would look at it and say, I would never say that. This sentence would never come out of my mouth. If I were just speaking to a person, I would never say it that way. As a collaborative influencer, figuring out a way to let the artists that you're working with bring their own story to life in a song means that sometimes you gotta just say, I would say it totally different than that, but that sounds natural coming out of their mouth, I'm gonna let that live. There are times that we're going through songs and I can think to myself, gosh, the rhythm of that phrasing is even so awkward that I have to choose as a co-writer to just let go of it because it feels natural to the artist. I find myself oftentimes working with an artist saying to the artist, how would you rather sing this? Would you say and right there, or would you say is right there? What's going to be more natural for you in that spot in that sentence? What feels more natural? Let me give you two different words, two different rhyming words to land this phrase. Which one feels more natural to you as you sing it? Try singing the line this way. Try singing the line this way. And who cares whether or not I as a songwriter like one more than the other? Working as a collaborative influencer means I'm going to offer them a couple of great options and find the thing that just feels the most natural coming out of their mouth. Taking this role, I realize, I made you raise your hand in the beginning, that most of you in this room want to be in the spotlight. You want to be on the stage. Regardless of whether or not you all get to that position, if you're willing to invest your creativity in some of the other artists around you, it means that you can help them say things in a way that's different than you would say it. It doesn't matter. There's a million ways to say it, a million ways to sing any given line. But helping that artist find the most natural way that they would say things, helping them find, obviously there are places you need to draw a line in the sand and say, that's grammatically wrong, or no, that doesn't make sense. But most of the time, a lot of the time at least, in the process for me, it really is just a matter of the way you naturally speak compared with the way I naturally speak. So in all of this, know when to just let go as well. All right, I'm going to skip that little bit of ridiculousness. Let me just end with two big picture thoughts and we'll call it a night, shall we? Two random big picture bits of encouragement that I want to hit you with. Being a co-writer in 2013 means that you've got to get better at two unique skills. Skill number one is it's time for you to decide to become a producer. I don't mean that you have to produce people's records. I mean that you're going to have to become comfortable in that world. Almost all of the hit songs that are happening these days are co-written with the producer. It means that in co-writing sessions, me sitting down with another writer in one of the writers' rooms here, figuring out a song, turning in a good work tape on my phone of guitar vocal, I cannot do that anymore. These days, for most of what I do, the artists are carrying in master quality demos, and it means that I've had to learn, even as an old punk, how to get better at the stuff that I do as a producer. Even when it comes to just mimic for the sake of demos for me, I've got to figure out how to become a better producer because the producers are co-writing all the songs. And it means if you actually find that you've got skills in that area, you're going to be able to, because you're being handed the tools of great songwriters through your connection with Belmont, you're being given a set of tools that most of the world doesn't have. You also have access to figuring out how to handle yourself better in that environment, how to handle yourself better in a Pro Tools environment, how to handle yourself better in front of a USB keyboard, how to pull out a beat that actually sounds like somebody might want to sing to it, an artist these days. So, decide to become a better producer and a better artist developer. Those of us who are songwriters in 2013 have got to begin looking around us for the talented people that are not going to float to the surface unless they get great songs in their hands. And then start taking a risk and helping them find those great songs. Very few labels these days are willing to sign an artist that doesn't already have their own career developed. There used to be this day back, I'd say even 5 years ago, much less 15 or 20 years ago, where labels were willing to pour all kinds of money into pulling an unknown person up from the line at the grocery store who they see a spark of talent in and trying to turn them into an artist. It almost doesn't happen anymore. There are a few random cases of that, but not like it was happening 10 years ago. Nobody is finding sparks of talent and developing them into artists, investing money and time into building an artist. Plenty of labels who are finding an independent artist who can sell 20,000 copies on their own and helping them move from 20,000 copies to 200,000 copies. But nobody's finding a spark of talent anymore and turning it into something. Producers do that. Songwriters do that. You and I have got to be searching for the great talent around us because we know that we have the ability to give them what no record label and no producer could, a great song. And a great song can carry them into the world. You've been handed the tools here to be able to help the artists around you find great songs. So learn to be paying attention to the great artists that are all around you. Who are the next big producers around you as well? Who are the people that are late at night in the studios on Belmont's campus tweaking a drum track to get it sounding really awesome? You got to figure out who they are and feed them with great songs. They're looking for bands to record. You need to help them find songs for the bands that they're recording. Get to know the great producers around you. Who's going to be the next great producer and become their go-to lyricist. Become the third voice in every session they produce. Here's my last little sermonette. In a world with 20 million songs currently on Spotify, only great songs are going to rise to the surface. Only great songs are going to get anybody's attention anymore. We have an opportunity as creators of copyrights to help the world find great songs. When people have access to so much music, it means that everything gets washed out. Everything becomes mediocre. Everything becomes lame to me. The world has long since hit its quota of good songs. The 99% are thirstier than ever for great songs that are timeless, that are moving. So help the artists that you have an opportunity to connect with find great songs. Stop settling for lyrics and melodies that are good enough. If I hear another artist or young writer say to me, yeah, but that song is just as good as whatever, I'm going to kick them in the shin. If you come to me and say that, just know that 2 days a week I wear boots. So find me on a day I'm not wearing boots. We don't need any more songs that are as good as the junk that's already out there. You've got an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to be the creators of the stuff that is better than what is out there. You got to be about finding great songs and building what's next. We were talking about Reggie Ham earlier. This stats have to be anecdotal, but let me at least throw in here once. It's one of the things he said on his blog. Of all the people who have ever written a song, only 1% of those will ever make a dime doing it. Only 1% of the people who have ever sat in their living room, gotten around a piano, pulled out a guitar, and tried to write a song, only 1% of those will ever make a dime doing it. Of that 1%, only 1% of those will ever make a comfortable living writing songs. Will make a comfortable living from music. Do you get where we're going numerically here? 1% of all the people who have ever written a song will ever be paid a dime for the song that they created. Of those, only 1% will ever generate a comfortable income from writing those songs. And if you could see the pile of uncut songs that those 1% of a 1% have written and are unrecorded and will never be recorded, it would force you at the beginning of every writing session to say, what is it about this idea that makes it worth singing? What is it about this song that we're working on that makes it worth the world hearing? What is it about this thing that we're creating that makes it great, that demands the attention of people, that would convince anybody in the world to give me 3.5 minutes of their time? You'd quit writing You'd quit settling for mediocre songs. I'm sick of them. We've hit our limit of mediocre songs. The world has too many mediocre songs. If you could hear the great songs that already exist that nobody in the world is ever going to hear because they're in a catalog somewhere tucked away in an office down Music Row, it would force you to say, yeah, but what makes this idea special? What's great about this idea that's worth me investing the next couple hours in trying to write? No more settling, okay? Please, I beg you. You have a unique set of skills, of tools that you've been handed by your connection to this university and to this program. And it means that we've got to be the people, the harbingers of great songs, the people who are telling the world there is something still that matters, that can move the soul when you connect a great lyric with a great melody and a talented artist. The world can be moved by brilliant songs if you'll just quit settling for good enough, for as good as. That line's okay, it'll work. Let's just go with it. Reach for something great. Promise? Okay. Thanks for letting me do this. Go team.